Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars, and you're watching another episode of From the Luthier's Workbench. If you like to build or repair guitars, I suggest you click that subscribe button down below, and you'll become part of a community of fellow luthiers. And together, we can take your skills to a whole new level. In this episode, I'm going to be covering part 2 of the Echo laminated top guitar build. And that means I'm going to be preparing the wood for this build. Now, if you watched part 1, you know that I'd already selected wood for the fretboard, the neck, and part of the body. However, I still need to pick up some wood for the main part of the body, which is the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in the car, we're going to head over to the lumber yard, and we're going to select hopefully some mahogany, which I can use for this build. Now, if you would like to go back and watch part 1, maybe you missed it, at the end of this episode, I'm going to post a link to a playlist that I'll be creating for this series. So anytime you've missed an episode, you can just click that link, go back and see all the different episodes that are going to be in this series and get caught up. So let's head over to the lumber yard and see what we can find. Now I'm lucky in that I've got a choice of about 4 different lumber yards that I can hit in the Denver metro area to see who's got the best wood for what it is I need. And in this case, I'm going to be stopping at Austin Hardwoods, which is one of my favorites because it's really close by where I live. And Austin has both a warehouse for their really popular grades of wood, you know, the stuff like maple and ash, poplar, cherry, and mahogany. But they also have a showroom where they display most of their really exotic hardwoods, you know, your Purple Heart, your um, Bacote, and all the other different kinds of really cool hardwoods that we like to use. So I'll hit the showroom first just to see what they've got. And here you can see they've got pretty good selection of a wide variety of different woods. Like there's some sapella, and there is also some uh, genuine mahogany, and it's a pretty decent selection. And I typically will get my neck and fretboard woods here rather than the body woods. Now this is a really nice slab of black limba that I ended up passing on, but I may swing back by there and pick it up. So then I ended up heading out to the warehouse where I selected from a pallet of 8-quarter African mahogany, which is one of my favorite woods to use for guitar bodies. It's always very consistent in color, weight, grain patterns. Uh, I used to prefer Honduran mahogany or genuine mahogany, but lately the quality just hasn't been there. And because it's on the CITES list, it's just not my first choice anymore. But I'll check the moisture content to make sure the wood is dry, which it almost always is because the wood that I buy from Austin Hardwoods is kiln dried, so I don't have to really worry too much about that. All right, now hold on a second. What am I talking about when I mention moisture content? Well, a lot of guitar builders, luthiers, guitar manufacturers, they'll talk about how they store the wood that they use for building guitars in their shop where it can acclimate to the humidity levels where they're going to build the guitar. And a lot of times, especially in your larger, higher end guitar building workshops, the humidity levels and the climate is controlled carefully. And as a result, they like to make sure that the wood is acclimated to that climate so there are no surprises as they build the guitar, because wood, as it's sitting here, can only do 2 things. It can absorb or expel moisture from the air. And when that happens, the shape of the wood can change ever so slightly, but it's enough to affect the playability of the guitar. It can also cause wood to crack and split as moisture leaves the wood when the humidity levels suddenly drop. This is really important if you're building guitars in a climate where either the humidity levels can be fairly high or if they fluctuate wildly between high and low readings. That's when you need to make sure your climate is controlled and that the wood is acclimated to the shop that you're working in. Now, I build my guitars and I purchase all my wood locally in Colorado. And here in Colorado, the humidity levels in my shop are always at about 40%. It rarely goes above 40%. Even after a major snowstorm or a period of rain, the moisture levels just don't fluctuate that much. And since the wood I'm purchasing was bought locally and is kiln dried, it's probably not going to be very high in moisture content to begin with. So I don't really have to worry so much about fluctuations in humidity or anything like that and how it might affect the wood. I'm pretty much good to go with the wood that I'll buy. Now, that being said, I do buy wood in bulk quantities at times, and especially for necks and fretboards, and that wood can sit around as long as several years before it ever gets used. But for bodies and things like that, it's not as big of an issue. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to checking the moisture content of the wood. If you're wondering whether it's possible to fit a 10-foot long slab of mahogany into the back of an old Pontiac Vibe, yeah, you can. It just takes a little bit of finessing. Now this is the board that I selected. It's a really nice straight grained mahogany, quarter sawn, and just has a beautiful ribbon stripe pattern which is consistent all the way through. I've had several viewers ask me if I have a Patreon account where they can send money to show support for my YouTube channel. I don't. However, what I do have is a website where you can purchase plans for electric guitars as well as many of the tools that I use to make guitars. It's called eguitarplans.com, and I'll put a link down in the description below. Think of it as a way to show me support while getting something in return. Now let's get back to the video. I'll start by cutting off a 36-inch long piece from the end of this slab, and that's what I'm going to use for this project. I'll set the remaining piece aside and then take that 36-inch long piece and cut it in half. That way I've got two 18-inch long boards which I can glue together to form the blank. The board I purchased was about 8 inches wide, which is an inch wider than I need it to be. So I'll slice off an inch, and that will give me the two blanks that are 7 inches wide. So when they're glued together, they'll be 14 inches. Next, I'm going to cut down a piece of walnut, which I'm going to be using as part of the lamination. And I need to remove the excess wood because it makes it easier and faster to cut later on. Then it's off to the bandsaw so I can resaw the walnut into two separate pieces that I'll use for part of the lamination. I'll do the same thing with a almost identical size slab of flamed maple, which will be used for the top of the guitar. The flame maple top will be about 3/8 of an inch thick, and to get it to the final thickness, I'll run it through my drum sander. Since I have to remove quite a bit more wood from the walnut, I'll run it through my planer until I get it down to a thickness of about 1/8 of an inch thick. Next, I have to make sure that all the gluing edges between the blanks are square, so I'll use my 6-inch benchtop joiner to do this. And having my joiner attached to my flip top workstand is a real space saver here. Plans for this bench are available at eguitarplans.com. Now you'll notice I'm running both the body blanks through the joiner at the same time. And what I've done is I've placed the top faces together. And what this does is it cancels out any potential error of the fence with respect to the bed of the joiner. That way, when I place the two pieces together, the blank will be completely flat. And of course, I'm going to do the same thing to the book matched flame maple top as well as my walnut plates that I'll be sandwiching into the lamination. The overall thickness of the mahogany portion of my body blank needs to be about 1¼ inches. So I will mark that and draw a line indicating where I need to slice off the excess portion of the blank. Then I'll take it over to my bandsaw and I'll slice off that portion by making sure I cut on the waste side of the line. That will leave a little extra wood so that I can run it through my planer and plane it down to the final thickness and get the surface absolutely flat. Well, guys, that's all the time I have for this episode of From the Luthier's Workbench. In the next episode, I'll be covering part 3 of the Echo Laminated top guitar build. And hopefully in that episode, we'll finalize the preparation of the blanks and maybe even start to cut some pieces on the CNC machine. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Take care, and we'll see you soon.